Hi, everyone. We're thrilled that everyone was able to join this webinar, Combating Food Waste in Education, Innovative Solutions for Schools, hosted by Emerald Ecovations. This session brings together passionate leaders who are creating real change across school districts and communities, finding creative and practical ways to make sustainability a reality. We'll be recording this webinar and we'll post a link to the recording on LinkedIn in the coming days. Please share this recording with anyone you feel may be interested in learning more. Let me introduce my co-hosts and the panelists. We have Stephen O'Brien, founder and president of SOBX2 Consulting. Stephen's a nationally recognized leader in the K-12 food service, sustainability, and strategic partnerships. As a founder of SOBX2 Consulting, he helps school districts and industry partners design innovative programs that advance healthy, sustainable, and efficient food service operations nationwide. Alicia Pitrone Hauser, Director of Nutrition Services for San Diego Unified School District. As Director, Alicia leads San Diego Unified's Love Food Not Waste initiative, advancing food waste reduction and sustainability across all school cafeterias. Her leadership has positioned the district as a national model for operational excellence and environmental responsibility. Janet Whited, Recycling Specialist, also from San Diego Unified School District. Janet plays a key role in implementing sustainable food service practices through the Love Food Not Waste program. She focuses on operational efficiency, staff engagement, and ensuring that sustainability goals are achieved throughout district kitchens. Meredith McDermott, Chief Sustainability and Decarbonization Officer, New York City Public Schools. Meredith oversees New York City Public Schools' comprehensive climate and sustainability goals and programs, including the Food Waste Prevention Plan. Her leadership integrates climate action into school operations and infrastructure, teaching and learning, and community partnerships across the nation's largest school system. Atsuko Quirk, the Executive Director from Cafeteria Culture. Atsuko leads Cafeteria Culture, a national nonprofit dedicated to waste reduction, mindful consumption, and youth climate education. Through film, education, and advocacy, she empowers students to become environmental change makers in their schools and communities. And lastly, Rhonda Keyser, also a Program and Policy Director, also from Cafeteria Culture. Rhonda supports Cafeteria Culture's programs focused on climate action, waste reduction, and student engagement. Her work connects classrooms with community action, helping young leaders champion sustainable choices that make a measurable impact.
Great. Thank you for the introductions, Alex, and welcome everyone. We're really excited to have this opportunity to share these stories and hopefully help everyone to lengthen their stride in their sustainability journey. Let's jump in with our opening question. This is for all of the panelists. What was the turning point that made your districts or organization prioritize food waste reduction? Maybe we'll start with, go ahead, Cafeteria Culture.
So we go first. Thank you for joining, everybody. I'm Atsuko from Cafeteria Culture. And yeah, we're a New York City-based nonprofit and working with students to reduce cafeteria waste. And we started with the plastic waste, and our students started Plastic-Free Lunch Day, and that's now in national for twice a year. Then we have been doing really intensive waste audits, and we were focusing on plastic first, but then we found out that amount of untouched food waste that's coming to as waste. So we found out 45 to 80% of the food waste was completely untouched, discarded, right? So we are like, we have to do something with this. So that's the really turning point, taking the data, then found out about the food waste.
Great. Thank you, Atsuko. Alicia, do you want to go?
I'm going to let Janet speak to this question, as she's been with San Diego Unified since the inception of the Love Food Not Waste program, and I want to give her all the credit.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks, Alicia. Again, my name is Janet. So I would say for this question, back in around 2015, I can relate to Cafeteria Cultures. identification of the amount and volume of food waste that was in the waste stream. When I would focus on recycling in our schools and our lunch courts, just the amount and volume of food that was there really made me want to focus on how we could reduce that, recover the edible food. And so I developed the Love Food Not Waste plan and basically pitched it to our Food and Nutrition Services department. And thankfully it did gain traction, and they were able to push it through leadership and eventually identify and allocate resources in a half-time position in their department that could assist me with the effort. So I really appreciate that. I'm in a completely different department out of our physical plant operations. So we kind of coordinate our efforts together, and we have been working ever since for about the last 9 years on this program to try and make some headway.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Meredith?
I think it's been kind of a continuation of it's been a series of things over many years. I would say probably a point of like real catalyst type change really started with a group of parent advocates in like certain parts of the city many years ago. There was growing concern around just food waste and what is the city going to do to kind of deal with this more effectively, while also, you know, ensuring that healthy meals are provided to the kids, you know, on a daily basis in this massive operation. So it's giving them all the food, but making sure we're not throwing it all away. So I'd say parent advocacy, organizations like our dear partners, Cafeteria Culture, Rhonda and Atsuko, you know, their approach in really getting some of the actual data and visualization. So not only are they doing audits, but we're actually seeing profound impact when you go in and you actually are diverting, you're kind of dividing different waste products, whether it's recycling, you know, garbage, and all of our compostable products, and then of course food scraps. So having that information and visualizations be able to kind of fuel this discussion, I would say that really catalyzed New York City to create really a lot of sustainability goals for the city itself. A lot of the city's sustainability goals really started, they kind of are rooted in waste. So many years ago it was recycling, and then again that's evolved over time. So I think it's not one isolated thing. It's more kind of a united effort to call attention to the problem. And then we spent the last, you know, years remaining and essentially ever since focused on solutions and continuity of the operations.
Great. That's like a perfect segue to the next part of our discussion, which is really shifting to challenges and solutions. I'm going to turn it over to Alex for the next question.
Yes. So what are the biggest operational challenges the schools are facing reducing food waste today?
Hi, I just also want to just note that we are in a school, putting our money where our mouth is. We just did a program this morning, and here we are at a school. It's kind of obvious. You might hear a bell in a minute in the middle of an answer. But just to say that, you know, operationally, there's a lot going on, and we do a lot of hyperlocal pilots with Cafeteria Culture, meaning that we work with one school, and we collect this robust data that Atsuko is amazing at collecting, and also she's our video maker. And so we have a lot of visual and numerical data that we collect to sort of prove out our what we're trying to do. So we're not only reducing food waste in the pilot, hyperlocal pilot, but we're also having a great relationship with our Office of Food and Nutrition Services in New York City Public Schools to try to scale that as quickly as possible. So that hurdle it's really about institutionalizing the behavior that we prove out. So that's a challenge because not every school is the same. Not every school, the culture of every school is not exactly the same. So we're trying to find the ways to sort of institutionalize it and
Right,
spread
so
it
that
out.
every principal has a different priorities. So those are, you know, how to make it work for, in general, institutionalized across the all, schools. That's the second largest institutional food service in the country after the military. So it's the massive change that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I'll just segue, absolutely, it's the sheer number of schools, and I like the way that you phrased that. So it's making it part of the culture across the district, not a one and done kind of program, but and so it's a lot of clarity and repetition to the community, and so I would say scaling is one of the biggest operational challenges for us. Janet, did you have anything to add?
No, that was generally it. I think I definitely agree with the institutionalization. You can do so many hyper-local waste audits and things like that, and then trying to scale it and train and retrain every single year with all the changes of a transient school community, not just students, but staff and kitchen staff, principals, teacher staff. It can be challenging to keep it rolling year after year. So that's a big challenge.
I concur with that. That's a huge challenge, just the ongoing need for training. It never ends. It never can end. It's sort of endless, and you really have to keep up with all of those needs. That's a very big challenge. I mean, scale, we've already talked about it. We've got 1,859 schools. I think we have over 2,000 cafeterias in New York City. It's insane. But also, just to kind of give some more color to this, is that, the priority of our school kitchens is to feed kids, right? So we can't replace that. We certainly can't diminish that. We don't want to interrupt that. We don't want to disrupt that. We don't want to sort of give the impression that, well, let's just focus on like the waste end of it. The front end of the operation is by far the most important. So that's something that we greatly respect, working with our Office of Food and Nutrition Services partners to make sure that we're supplementing and helping to enhance these parts of the operation, but again, not get in the way. I'll also just throw another couple of things out there. Short lunch periods. I believe our students only have about 20 minutes to eat. And so now it's, we've got multiple waste streams, and, you've got these colored bins, and you got to maintain order. And I mean, that takes, especially for young kids, they need some assistance or guidance. And so those short lunch periods really make it extra challenging, as does the fact that in most schools, not all schools, but most schools, they don't have any additional like staff capacity that's dedicated to helping kids to sort waste. And, again, with younger students in our elementary schools in particular, they don't know unless they have cafeteria culture or other partner organizations or somebody in there every day to kind of reinforce it. It's very challenging to keep that up, and we can't expect that much from young people. They do need help. Their resources are not available for that level of support to be provided or available in all of our kitchen spaces or cafeterias. The equipment need, just like bins, signs, those types of things. I mean, sure, we've done many things, grants, we've secured money from the city. We've done major logistical undertakings to deploy resources equitably to all of our schools. However, we can't do that in perpetuity. A, the resources aren't there, but B, like also, I mean, it's just my staff packaging up stuff in the basement and getting it, getting some favors from the shipping guys to, what I mean? It's a thing that part of it needs to be institutionalized in the city system itself. And it isn't really, it hasn't really been. We're just trying to make it, internally a thing. But again, those resources are not infinite. We also are working across many different union labor folks. So, there's very, very specific roles and responsibilities that, the cooperative nature of this is essential. Often it works great, might need to be figured out at a school level, but it isn't always just automatically like, oh yeah, you got this, I got that. Sometimes it takes a little bit of growing pains or hard conversations to really have it be sort of a team approach. Staff and students are responsible for sorting in New York City. It's not the custodian engineers or the cleaning staff's responsibility to sort waste. It's their responsibility to maintain that separation and get it out on the curb at the right time, right? So, and keeping that area clean. So it does involve everybody. When you're dealing with the different union labor groups, sometimes it's almost overly prescriptive, but you have to abide by those things and uphold them because that's just part of the operation. So again, those are just all things that we consider pretty much on a daily basis here and probably everywhere else across the country.
Super. That's great. You know, you sort of alluded to this a little bit about after you see these operational challenges and you're working with the school communities and you're trying to make change, how do policy drivers, either at the local, state, or federal level, support or complicate efforts to reduce food waste in schools?
Well, I want to say that as an organization who we were working so hard on reducing plastic and, you know, getting policy around plastic is still an ongoing difficult battle. But in terms of food waste, when we looked and saw the stats around how much food waste, how much untouched food waste there was, we just thought, well, what do we need to change? We can do that. We did that before. And then we looked at the USDA rule, which is offer versus serve, which is, you know, I'm sure everybody here knows what that is. But so we realized that there was already policy. And so policy is our friend in this case. And we can actually lead with that and just work to support that policy and help to, as we said, institutionalize the, you know, the serving policy, the serving practices and, you know, education around the menu, all of that to support the policy.
Rhonda, can you describe a little bit about why you use the language untouched? And I would elaborate a little bit about a basic example of the lunch offer versus serve program, because there may be participants on the webinar that are not familiar with the USDA requirements. So just a quick example of what the lunch offer versus serve is, and then why you keep using the words untouched.
Okay, so there are 5 kinds of food that have to be offered every day. And the kinds of food, it doesn't correspond exactly with the food groups that you traditionally think of. There's protein, meat or meat substitute, there's fruit, vegetable, a grain, and then milk. Milk is its own kind of food. And then students only have to take 3 of those kinds of foods that are offered on any given menu day. 3 kinds of food, and one of them has to be a fruit or vegetable. It can be both, but at least one has to be a fruit or vegetable. So it's completely shocking to most adults in the cafeteria who aren't behind the serving line that students don't have to take milk. They don't have to take protein. And yes, maybe we would be hangry if we didn't take those things sometimes, but that is their choice. They can take, you know, just 3 items. So that is the offer versus serve rule, and that is often students are plated with all 5 items on their plate in the interest of getting them sitting down more quickly. So
And then the untouched.
yeah, and then thank you. You
Right.
want to talk about untouched?
Right, so the untouched means unopened packaged items or completely no bites in, like whole apples coming as clean as possible with whole apples or you know, so those are we call it untouched food. So we separate it like untouched food waste and partially eaten food waste. Those are we make 2 categories to define untouched and partially, so that partially eaten food waste, we don't want to point fingers to students, so you have to eat more. But untouched food waste, we can probably do something on this. So that's what, you know, we kind of started to work on the untouched food, reducing untouched food waste by using offer versus serve provisions that USDA already has in place.
Great. Thank you for elaborating. Alicia and Meredith, do you want to talk a little about how policy drivers at the local, state, or federal either support or complicate your efforts in the districts?
Sure. Meredith, I really appreciate you bringing up adequate time for the students to eat. I'm very passionate about changing that I see it all the time. It is left up to principals here at San Diego Unified to craft their bell schedules, and in the state of California, our deputy superintendent of California Department of Ed, there are recommended times for the students to eat. We work so hard in food service to do as much as we can around fresh, scratch, speed scratch. I was just at an event 2 weeks ago at Baker Elementary. We rolled out our electric food truck to the kids. We had an amazing fiesta menu, and I had fun sitting with kids, back and forth, different tables. And the elementary kids, they're slow. By the time we get them through the salad bar and they sit down, they've got a teacher saying, finish up, finish up, Johnny, it's time to go. And so I would love any kind of support at any of those levels, local, state, federal, so that seat time is mandated for these kids.
Thank you. That's great. Meredith?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's been kind of a missing piece. There's a lot of sort of fragmented policy, for example, like we don't often hear mention of, we've tried to change this recently locally and now at the state level, but where education isn't even included historically in like a municipality's climate or sustainability plans. It doesn't make any sense. It's like even doing those things which seem so obvious are still in their infancy. So, the seat time is a huge thing. And I do think that there is a lot of unification between and amongst school districts in that regard. And so I want to think that it's possible if we kind of bind together to say this is kind of a problem. And it is creating these downstream effects, such as, increased food waste. A couple of things, that Rhonda and Atsuko had mentioned. I agree that policy of any type, whether local, state, federal, it really can provide a platform. It can be a lever for us. We just got to pull that lever. So that's great. And that does help shape. A lot of people need that kind of directive in order to, feel like, okay, I guess I have to do that. Doesn't mean that they will do anything about it. What I will say though, policy is just policy. It's not a plan. As a person who spends a lot of time on the operational implementation of a lot of policies and plans, it's our job to figure out how these things actually impact or include schools, period. So from bottom to top, top to bottom, and all around. So policy does not equal a plan. A lot of times there's a misperception that policy, especially if it affects you, especially if it affects a public school district, that there's automatically resources associated with it. Most of you probably on this call know that that is not true. It is absolutely not true. Typically, policies do not come with resources for those that it affects. I would say some of the things with different practices across not just states, but even cities within the same state. Everybody's got different practices, whether, recycling is even required, whether let alone composting or commercial services for food waste collections. It's so fragmented. So guess what happens? Everybody's always confused. That does not help anything. One thing I would say, we had with the food waste prevention plan, which Stephen and I together both worked on when that was a local legislation that was introduced a few years back. Interestingly enough, that legislation, great intentions. We're glad to be able to initiate some things like share tables, a food donation program, et cetera. But really the lines of accountability that the council members had put in there, it didn't really make any sense for how a school operates. They actually had stated in the original draft that a person, we have what's called a sustainability coordinator, that a principal designates every year. It's usually a teacher. There's no additional compensation for this. So meaning they were going to have the sustainability coordinator, again, most often a teacher, be responsible for food waste prevention plan at a school. Now, that does not make any sense, right? Now, they have to contribute to the plan and the effort, absolutely. However, they shouldn't be responsible on their own to report to, City Hall or whomever that they are responsible for food waste being prevented in that, like that's, they're teachers. They spend all of the time doing that. So again, that just doesn't really make any sense. I would say that there's a lot of demands being placed on school staff, whether it's building staff, kitchen staff, faculty, teachers, et cetera, administrators. There's a lot of additional demands that get put on their plates on a daily basis. We all know this. But there's not necessarily any reciprocal support or funding that comes in. So it's like where everybody's having to do more, but often with less. And so we have to continuously like temper all of these demands, plus our goals and real commitments. We're all very passionate about this stuff, but we also have to maintain core operations and kind of keep everything moving in the right direction all at the same time, and figure out how we resource programs and interventions that help us to address the core issues.
That's
It's a lot of
great
challenges.
example. Yeah, that's a great example of sort of the complicated aspect of operationalizing policy and some of the shortcomings that come through that, need to be tweaked and dealt with so that you actually still have success in reducing food waste in this example. Yeah. Great. Alex?
So what role does student engagement play in changing the cafeteria habits and reducing plate waste?
Okay, so we actually make every student to be, an ambassador in a way in the cafeteria. Our mission is to actually make school cafeterias as climate action hubs. It's a positive place that you can make a change, and then. Oh, anybody in there? Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay. So that's our core mission, that school cafeterias are the place that every single student has an equal access to. So that, we want to make the mealtime experience sort of positive and fun and making change, so that students still, they need to be motivated. They need to know the why it is important to make a change, why it is important to reduce waste. And then once they connect that, their actions actually connect to their community. Their actions can influence this whole big system, and then comes back to yourself as a personal connection to the community. It's gonna help the community. So we wanna make that connection, so that always students are gonna be ambassadors, no matter where you are or which school districts. So that's what we are thinking.
And when the students are in the lead, then you see those aha moments with the adults. They're not like, oh, what's this thing these ladies are asking me to do? They're there, and the students see those moments. They see the adults' faces light up, and they start to realize that they've had an impact on the adults. The adults get the information from the students, and they get the same aha moments. I mean, that's basic game design, right? You're getting them the endorphin levels because they're reaching the next level on the game. I mean, it's really golden when we see the kids and the adults start to connect like that way.
Janet, could you please speak up for San Diego Unified? Janet?
I will. Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, I would say, again, echoing cafeteria culture. I mean, student engagement is crucial. When we also do the education, the why, we call it the why behind the what. So they understand, why we're not just asking them to do something and not really providing the meaningful relationship as to why that's important. So that education, and then the students they get excited, they get involved, just getting them participating in food waste audits so they can see the cumulative effect, even just from their one lunch period or their entire school, how just one student, throwing away an apple or a couple of scraps, from their meal, they don't necessarily see that big picture, but when they can see the cumulative effect of all the students in their school, it does have an impact, and then being able to share that out and then giving them that leadership role to get involved in like a green team, environmental club. We have garden clubs that all get involved, and then they have that leadership role. They do some peer-to-peer teaching in the classrooms to educate the students in their own school about what is going on and why there is a need to participate in these kind of waste reduction, food waste reduction programs. So it just really gives them a sense of ownership, and I think gives them the likelihood that they will eat the food that they choose. When we tell them about, offer versus serve, you only have to choose this, and then eat it if for as much as you can and have the time to do it. So I think it just helps build long-term environmentally conscious habits across the board.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with all that has been stated by my colleagues here. To me, student advocacy and student leadership is just the best. This is why we do this work. We're doing it for kids. So, oftentimes student engagement, it can be for many things. We've all seen it. It's like, okay, did we engage kids? And it's very it's just a checklist thing for some people. For sustainability work, in particular for climate action, for health, wellness, things to actually support the student experience, these are all things we're doing it for them. So I think that we get to have fun. I like to say this is where we get to have fun, is when we're actively seeking the best ways to meaningfully engage kids, not just, yep, we check the box. It's how do we meaningfully build this kind of movement, this advocacy group, this network, peer-to-peer engagement as well. It's what are the things that we can do to support those moments in time for them so that it is in fact enriching their experience on an everyday basis. One of the things that I am so proud of our students is, without being asked by anyone, we have seen so many examples over the years of young kids, everything from young kids to high school kids, really taking stock of what's going on around them in their community, in their cafeteria, and looking at ways that maybe, asking questions of their principal, their kitchen managers, teachers, et cetera. They are kind of noticing things that are going on around them, and they're saying, well, why are we doing that? Why aren't we doing this? And they're approaching it, a lot of them, in such a productive way that I wish adults, they're like models for adults. If we could only ask such productive questions that are not meant to be on attack mode, it's really, really productive. But when they ask tough questions, why are we doing this? Why is it that we have all this single-use plastic? Why are we wrapping our apples in, saran wrap? Why is that happening? These are great questions, right? That have no easy answer. But I'm so proud of our students for doing such things as petitions with, one student kind of leading others, asking their administration questions. And oftentimes it's well, what do we do with this? They want this effort to go somewhere. So sometimes what Cafeteria Culture does, and then they'll talk to me about it, and we try to figure out, why don't we ask our friends in the Office of Food and Nutrition Services and see if they'd be willing to take a couple meetings with kids or groups of kids. And they have done this on a regular basis. And some of them have been very challenging conversations where kids are asking them directly, why did you make this decision? Why are we seeing this? You're saying it should be that, but it's actually not looking like that at our school. And, it is a massive undertaking to feed, it's 1 million meals a day in New York City. I mean, that's a lot of effort that goes into doing that, again, undisrupted, so that every kid has equal access to healthy food. It's a whole other thing when you add in all of these variables, but I do appreciate that it's kind of an all hands on deck, and the best people to call people to action by far are young people. So it's the students themselves that are the leaders in this. So as long as we just always remember that, we're just trying to support that to grow and really be, but to also have a place in making actual change, even in a huge system.
Great. I think now that we sort of laid the stage for the challenges and the opportunities, and also how to really affect change, utilizing the students primarily and thinking about them first and foremost, I want to pivot a little bit to having each of you dig in a little bit more on the work that you've all been doing within your particular organizations and districts. And I'm going to start with San Diego to talk a little bit about Love Food, Not Waste. And this is going to be to Alicia and Janet as far as, San Diego's Love Food, Not Waste program has gained traction. What strategies have been most successful in reducing waste on the operations side of things? What are you actually seeing now that you've been doing this for several years and you really are one of the flagship programs in the whole country when it comes to thinking about food waste and its interaction with the school meals program?
Okay, so the Love Food Not Waste program, there are a couple tenets of the program, and Janet, you back me up if I'm misspeaking, but when it was initially sold to the staff, they anticipated pushback, and they were happy to find that the staff was on board. The staff doesn't want to waste food, and so one of the tenets is let's feed the budget. Let's not waste food by requiring offer versus serve and all of the meal programs and educating the staff on that concept. We're feeding the budget. We're feeding the students primarily. We do about 1/10 of New York City's business per day. And we're feeding all of the students for free with California Universal Meals. And so we're trying to recover food back into production to reduce food waste at the source with offer versus serve education, breakfast in the classroom, share tables out in the lunch courts. And one of the strategies that Love Food Not Waste, which I think is brilliant, has used is the concept of tastefully empty salad bars. We're really proud of our comprehensive salad bar program with over 300 in around 200 schools. And so we found that we are using, instead of a 4-inch insert, instead of a 4-inch pan, let's use a 2-inch insert to reduce the amount that is being put out, gauging how much the students will take, and it still looks really pretty and nice. And so that has cut food waste by a lot. I'm going to let Janet speak to the other tenets of the Love Food Not Waste program.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Yeah, as she said, we basically have the five priorities, I call them, which is the number 1, feed students, she mentioned, number 2, feed the budget, and then number 3, Alicia also alluded to, is feed others, and that incorporates our share tables to feed hungry students. We recently had received a grant from the Dairy Council of California that was kind of to focus on unopened dairy products and other potential products that could be rescued from share tables to food pantries that are held at some of our schools through organizations like Feeding San Diego. And so we're working on some of these pilot opportunities to see how they might fit in to maybe a wider application down the road. Also, our edible food rescue, I'm sure most of the districts involved are incorporating this now. We've been doing this program for about 9 years, and we've probably collected over 562,000 pounds of rescued food from our school meals and provided it to our local community. And of course, my goal is to always, to reduce the amount that we even have to rescue just through our other aspects of food waste reduction, but still proud of the fact that we're able to rescue a significant amount of food. I'm sure as everybody did, we took a bit of a hit during the pandemic, lost a little traction there on our food rescue. So, building it back up, I mean, we're doing pretty well, but not to where it was before. So still, that's a opportunity that we continue to work on. The next priority that I call it is feed the soil, which incorporates our on-site composting program, which we call Cafe to Compost. So that's where a lot of our garden students are collecting leftover fresh fruit and vegetables from the salad bars and composting them directly on site in compost bins typically found in their garden. And then our offsite composting or food scrap collection program is involved in all of our school kitchens and a number of our schools. If you're not aware, the state of California mandates food rescue and food scrap collection from schools and many other organizations that generate food waste. So we are continuing to make that a priority and a reality. And last year we collected over 166,000 pounds of food scraps for offsite composting. And it goes to our local City of San Diego composting facility at the Miramar landfill. And we have a program this year where the city is making free compost available to our schools and free delivery. So it's sort of a win-win in a full circle where our food scraps are going there, being composted, and then it's being delivered back to our schools that can handle it. So, and even though we have one more priority, thanks to Cafeteria Culture, we've added feed plastic free to our priorities. So we have been focusing a lot on how we can reduce plastic use in our food service applications and have made some great strides in that.
Can I ask
That's great. I love the simple approach to having those 6 sort of tenets of things that you need to be aware of and sort of subscribe to. And I also love that you've done sort of that full circle, evolution of, feeding the students, but then ending with thinking about feeding the earth, and that whole continuum is really great. Can I just ask one clarifying question about the love food, love food, not waste. Can you tell me a little bit, Janet, about how that name came to be?
I will say it is not completely original. Early on in the, 2013, 2014, I think I had heard something about that, maybe over in the UK. It was like love food, hate waste. Didn't particularly like the
EPA had something like
or the
that.
EPA, and anyway, I guess what I had seen was, let's not hate it, which we kind of do, but but let's make it less. Anyways, so we called it Love Food Not Waste, and then just kind of stuck with it. Have been kind of open to other names over the years, but it's sort of stuck. So that's how we kept it.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's very clear. I think it's really clear. Wonderful. Alex?
Yes. So, Alicia, can you share how staffing, menu planning, or service models contribute to reducing waste?
Absolutely. We've talked about offer versus serve, and I think, the community, despite our efforts to educate at scale, is still confused. They are remembering lunch programs of years ago where the students were required to take milk and have that full tray. And so that is continuous education on offer versus serve. We're trying to menu plan things that the kids really want to eat so it doesn't get wasted. That is a constant conversation at the food services office, as I'm sure it is across the country in school programs. And the last part of that question, staff treatment, service models, yeah, and standardizing share tables. That's been a little bit of a challenge. Our local health department requires them to be manned. Share tables must be manned to have them available. And so we've got to account for that, and it can be challenged. I mean, I think it's pretty universal that we struggle to get staff, that wants to work a 3.5-hour shift in a school cafeteria. And so the share table can get difficult in that aspect. But I would say, like, it's just constant education. My marketing folks say clarity and repetition, clarity and repetition. When you've seen an impression like 500 times in the real world is when it sticks. And so that's our challenge. And this is a very important piece of what we do, but it's not the only piece.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's how I would answer that question.
What data do you collect to measure impact, and how do you use it to adjust sort of your priorities as an organization? I'll leave that to both of you.
Janet, go ahead.
So I guess from my side on the operational implementation side, as mentioned before, doing data from student waste audits, that include the quantity and type of waste, the composition of the waste, as Atsuko mentioned, is it untouched or partially eaten? It does make a difference in how we want to focus education and outreach and programs for that type of waste. So are able to do that. I have to say, recently, until we had, some budget challenges, as many districts do, our Food and Nutrition Services Department had hired a half-time person that was helping me. So one of my colleagues there on their side, Sarah Diaz, who was invaluable in really doing some of that hyper-local, working directly with certain schools on collecting data and gathering some of this data and getting the students involved with the science of collecting it and reporting it. So it was really a great opportunity for that, and then to use that information to maybe direct some models and how we can expand programs and adjusting operations there. We have in the past, I know some districts probably do this, we have looked at maybe technology tools for helping with data collection in the kitchen, things like maybe LeanPath. It was at the time not going to be really feasible for us to implement that type of program. So I think there's some really great opportunities out there, like dumpster sensors, even from my perspective, also trying to reduce waste overall and save the district money on waste hauling costs. Some of those tend to get a little pricey over time, but I think they can have a significant impact on how one adjusts programs. And more recently, I know some of our West Coast districts like Oakland Unified, and I think even Seattle Public Schools are looking at AI waste apps that can do identify and characterize waste from photos. Like you will take a picture of a waste in a trash can at a school, and it can generate some information on the type of waste. Certainly more speedy than throwing it all on a tarp on the ground. So which I still find very effective. Anyways, I think there's some great tools and opportunities and things we might be able to look to in the future also to help make those additional adjustments.
I think you bring up a good point, and it's probably an opportunity for a whole separate webinar about technology and how technology is evolving to reduce all kinds of waste and be more sustainable in general. So thank you for the idea. And moving along, I want to give a little bit of time for New York City and Meredith to really share a little bit about, how policy, really affects large systems change. And I think that Meredith's experience, I will say for those that are on the webinar, not to be turned off by the fact sometimes when you have people that are presenting from New York City, you feel that, oh, it's such a big system and it has lots of resources and there isn't going to be something that I can do in my own community, my own municipality or state. But I will encourage you to just understand that New York City really respects that role. When they think about their operations, their rules, their policies, they are thinking about the whole country and trying to say that, yes, things can be done in New York City that we hope, even if half of it could be replicated in other parts of the country, that's still moving us in the same direction. So even though you might not have all the resource and the scale that New York City has, there'll probably be something that you can dig into and potentially hear a tidbit of something that you can do something with. So I just wanted to sort of set the stage there, because sometimes people just turn off New York City's comments because it's so vast and so highly resourced compared to most. So turning it over to Meredith. Let me, Alex, you're going to ask that first question and then we'll continue on.
So New York City has such a broad sustainability program. How does food waste reduction fit within the larger climate and energy strategy?
No, it's a great question, and just want to say thank you to Stephen for framing that. I will say that all of us, I think, at school districts across the country, whether you have 2 schools or 2,000 schools, we really do all share similar challenges. Like there's a lot of very common threads. We all have different things that we have to deal with in our own systems as well. We have to deal with scale. Others have a lot of other things that they have to deal with too. So yeah, like Stephen said, at no time do we think that any of our challenges are really particularly unique. Really, they're not. And I will say also that in terms, Stephen, I love how you're qualifying this stuff as heavily resourced. I would say we've had to fight tooth and nail for every resource that we've obtained for any of these programs at all. And
It's true.
down to like bins and buckets for, doing liquid waste pour outs. I mean, that's not just there on the shelf for us to grab. It's making sure that people know that there needs to be a shelf there that they got to then put stuff on so that we can then grab it for our schools. And so I just want to say that I know that's a common struggle that any public school system anywhere, including in other countries, everybody faces those challenges. I mean, they're not resourced enough, just full stop. So we've built a really sort of big, fairly bold climate and sustainability program and office here in New York City. Again, a lot of that has really been built upon kind of the back of zero waste and trying to keep a mind's eye, like a lot of these other things that we've kind of advanced to doing more of, including in-depth, like dealing with energy code and all of our energy management, utility management for all of our buildings. It really kind of starts with waste. The good thing about waste is it is something that is very tangible to people. Everybody knows what garbage is. Everybody knows what litter is. Recycling, it seems to be a shared struggle with all of humankind, especially in America. But these are things that just require a lot of support and attention on an ongoing basis. So, we, as part of every single thing that we do, we try to look at how waste really does play such a huge role. Waste diversion and reduction play a huge role in our sort of overarching climate action, which is really to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We try to look at how waste is, and food waste in particular, are really part of our system's operational, like climate mitigation efforts, and really framing it accordingly. So instead of having waste be a thing over here, energy efficiency over here, solar over here, we really try to say these are all climate actions. All of them, Rhonda and Atsuko talked a lot about this earlier, about how it's talking to students and teachers and people within a school building and families about how all of these things, sorting of waste, reducing food waste, being mindful of your choices, really only taking what you're going to consume, framing it as this is a climate action. Full stop. It's an individual action. It rolls up to this massive collective action, and just making sure that everybody understands that these are climate actions too. Oftentimes, I found that they were treated almost disparately. It's not. We really look at climate sustainability as being the umbrella, the application here being like the importance of waste and waste reduction, not just in a school building itself or cafeteria, but in that community, the immediate surrounding community as well. No one wants to see a box full of beautiful, uneaten, untouched apples or oranges sitting in a box out at the curb. We collect our garbage at the curb in New York City. That's the reason I say that. In Chicago, it's an alley. In San Diego, it's often an alley. But wherever it is in your school system, ours just happens to go right directly out front of a school most of the time. So if you're seeing nice food, and we have a lot of situations where our school buildings are located directly next to public housing. And if you have, again, untouched food sitting to be collected as garbage, and you're sitting next to a public housing development, that's just not something that I want to perpetuate. I certainly do not want to have that proliferate. That is absolutely the opposite of what we're trying to go for. So we want to look at this as circular economy, recovering value from compost, so from organics. The Office of Food and Nutrition Services here has done a lot of things really looking at food, procurement itself, those practices, but also trying to get local, fresh foods, but also trying to shift to providing more options for students, including more plant-based meal options. That has played a heavy role in reducing our overall carbon emissions up to 40% per student out of a study that was done from about 2018 to 2022 out of the former Humane Society. It's called something else now. I can't remember the actual name. I apologize. But think about how significant that is. These shifts in practices have such huge impacts. And that really does matter when we're really looking at our overall climate and sustainability progress. So we have full scale, all of our schools have access to commercial curbside composting collection services from our city's Department of Sanitation. So it is a real commercial full-scale operation. Again, all of our schools are supposed to do it. Does that mean that every school does it, or let alone do it well? No, absolutely not. Like we know that they need a lot of help to set it up. They need a lot of help in maintaining the sort of core urgency around doing this on a daily basis. We really, in the last few years, as catalyzed by a local policy, the Food Waste Prevention Plan, that enabled us to set forth certain guidelines for cafeteria staff, for school administration around share tables and food donations, kind of encouraging hyper-local approaches to, our operation is too big. We simply have too many sites for one operation to be able to accommodate all of our different inputs on a regular basis. And so we really have to break it down to like hyper local community, like things like food pantries, local shelters, churches, things like that. That's really helped us to map that out. We still have a long way to go in implementing that, where everybody knows that this is not only a recommendation, but we really do want all of our schools to have such things as share tables. But we look at tackling food waste is one of the fastest, most cost-effective climate solutions that exist. It reduces emissions, it can increase food security, and it can conserve resources. So as long as we're sort of framing all of our broader plan things and contextualizing it around those sort of key tenets, the more that we're able to have everybody sort of understand that this is an emissions reduction thing, which, by the way, we're hyper accountable for in very measured and accountable ways. It also is, if we're reducing waste, we're also hopefully reducing the number of trucks on the road. We're reducing the fuel that is needed in all of these trucks, therefore having that environmental benefit and, again, emissions reduction opportunity. It increases our operational resource efficiency, which, again, you work for a public school district. We always are thinking about the resources that are needed and how can we make sure we're minimizing costs in places where we can, so that more resources can really go to our classrooms and our students, because that's really where they should go. It also can contribute to a cleaner school environment. So not only can the school itself be cleaner, the more that we're really paying attention to our waste and properly managing our waste, but it also, and again, this applies everywhere, not just in New York City, it also has community impacts as well. If we're kind of keeping ourselves in order, and that includes all of our waste streams, then we are really providing a public health benefit as well. That's a really big deal. We here have to deal with rat populations. If we're terribly managing our waste and we're throwing away a lot of food, guess what that's going to attract? It's going to attract all those little pests that no one wants to see. And that really is a quality of life thing for our folks here in New York City. So our schools contribute to that so much, including with waste. So we really try to make sure that we parse that out as a real thing. We haven't really touched on this much yet, but feeding people in their bellies, but also their minds, not feeding landfills, but really having this be a teaching and learning opportunity as well. It is one of the most tremendous and tangible ways that our young people can learn. And again, to learn how to be responsible citizens who are not only, good New York City residents, but also global citizens as well.
Great, Meredith. That was a jam-packed answer and really informative. Really, really informative. Could you sort of, if you were to think about, I'm going to just sort of think about this in a little bit more of a concise way, but if you could think of sort of one policy mechanism that has been most effective, is there one that sort of stands out to you? that has really helped you to sort of move the needle forward, specifically on food waste?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I would say starting many years ago with the city's sustainability plan, and that included zero waste goals, that kind of helped set the stage. It was a precursor, it wasn't the be all end all. I would say, over the years, as there's been more targeted policy advocacy around, we talk about plastic reduction, of course, but also food waste. I would say all of the levers were kind of in place to enact really a broader city goal to provide composting services to just basically all of New York City. That really started with schools. Schools are really the thing that the Department of Sanitation and the city, with us, of course, being key drivers and partners, it's like, well, of course we should do this in schools first. And then, with COVID and some things that kind of slowed down a little bit, like Janet mentioned, you're making so much progress and some of it got pulled back. We're talking about a lot of different issues, but when the city was prepared to kind of expand and accelerate, expanding composting to all of New York City residents, businesses, institutions, et cetera, that expansion really started with schools and it ended with schools. So the New York City Public Schools were a key driver in the broader New York City's goal to reduce food waste and to just basically make sure that whatever is left, that it is sort of managed properly on the back end. So that's where that composting, that's not a food waste reduction thing. That's a diversion tool. So again, just to be very clear, it's all of the things on the front end of food service, plate waste, managing things inside of a school building. But we know that there's always going to be some plate waste. I mean, hopefully it's very little, but we want to make sure that that at least it's providing a useful purpose and that it is going to something better, providing soil for school gardens, things like that. So I would say the zero waste and composting, which go hand in hand, were really probably the key policy mechanisms that have enabled us to grow not only an operational approach and strategy and actual daily operational plan, customer service to our schools, but it
Yeah,
also has given us the ability to kind of grow and do really to provide that like outreach through human contact, because
right,
schools
right.
need help to do these things. And so I'd say that enabled those things really enabled us to kind of build some of those resources, though they're very small. They're small but mighty, and we really do actively try to support schools to do this on a daily basis.
Yeah, those two are great examples of how it created sort of a change in awareness around the food that was being discarded,
That's
and
right.
that then allowed for there to be opportunity in moving it forward.
Yeah, which
Great.
in turn had also helped to influence some of the menu planning and actual food service operations too, which I think holistically, there's a lot of really good things going on.
Great. Is there anything that you want to elaborate on a school specific level that sort of moved initiatives forward using any of the policies, or do you want to end it there with sort of how the overall
Yeah,
climate and culture changed?
I would just say the reason that we knew that things such as the share table and food donations, the reason that we really knew that they could be possible at schools is really schools figuring out a way to do it and kind of saying, hey, look what we were able to figure out. And us kind of saying, yep, see, this is, you know, we can talk to schools, until the cows come home, but at the end of the day, schools showing other schools and us helping to like lift up their valiant efforts and leadership is so important for it to not be intimidating. Everybody's so scared. Oh no, like it's gonna be another thing that we're gonna have to do. And everybody gets very caught up in that, understandably. But it is possible. It doesn't need to be additional. The trick is really how to integrate this in to an existing school operation and culture such that it isn't a heavy undertaking and burden. Things are not going to be sustainable if they're heavy burdens. So schools modeling after other schools that started simple and maybe have been able to grow, but it doesn't have to be complex. It shouldn't be complex. It's the most straightforward, kind of simple, beautiful things that are really the things that we should champion the most, because that's really ultimately how it happens on a daily basis at all of these places.
Great. Thank you, Meredith. I'm going to shift a little bit now to sort of the nonprofit perspective and thinking about cafeteria culture and how their programs through student engagement have really helped to move the needle on reducing food waste. So Atsuko and Rhonda, can you tell us a little bit about Cafeteria Culture's most recent program, Mindful Choice Meals, excuse me, and how does it work and what are the outcomes you have observed when schools adopt this program? And I'm also going to follow that up with a little bit about, what are the benefits to a food service program and facilities management that they could sort of learn from when you think about the Mindful Choice Meals program?
Okay, yes, Mindful Choice Meals program started because, as I explained earlier, that we found out 45 to 80% of the food waste was untouched. And then we designed this program that in the future, we don't have to go into schools, then schools can run this on their own. So there are basically three components. One is to actually educate everybody. It means the students, teachers, and school staff about offer versus serve rules. And we usually let one of the classes, like fourth grade class or something, to be the lead, and then they're going to do the outreach. They're going to, going around other classes to do the outreach for this rule part, and as well as why this is important. That again, that's the why part is really important. And then also they are going to teach adults, teachers. They do professional developments for teachers to teach this rules, and also staff who are assisting at the service line. They are really the key people, and sometimes we do the professional development for staff, and then they get really surprised about this rule, and then every person has a different rule saying that the milk is required, protein is required. What? So that the vegetable and fruit and milk, it is a complete meal, and then they get like, wow. So that is the important part. That's the one component. The second component is the menu communication, because every principal wants the line moving. That is the reason that kitchen staff just pre-plate every single item on the plate. The 5 components are all on the plate, and then take the plate and go, right? So that's everybody's sort of intention to maximize the eating time. But we found out that if we do the menu communication in advance, the students know the menu in advance. Like some schools do like morning announcements. Today's choices are, and then they are ready to choose when they're at the line. And we actually, see if this communication part takes more time. But if the students know the choice, then it really doesn't add more time at the line. And the third component is to ask kitchen staff to pre-plate only one item on the plate, and then ask the rest for students what they want to eat. Now this actively choosing part became really important. Even afterwards, we did the first couple of pilots with the waste audits. We found out that students are students are actually eating more food, 15 to 30% more food, which was a sort of happy coincidence that we found out that because some students say, I felt like I was in a restaurant. So that they feel like their choices are honored, right? So then they eat. Even they have less items on the plate, but they actually ate more by weight.
And can I say, we were so excited to share these findings with Office of Food and Nutrition Services, because what that data tells us is what we all know, is that school food is good, it's nutritious, it's appealing. And when students are given the choice, when they're invested in their choices, they're going to eat those. They're going to eat those choices. And so then we also learn that food waste is not about scarcity or austerity. It's really about agency. And it's about students being invested in their choices. And so, again, that's more about engaging them as partners and respecting that they can make those choices if given the proper, education about it.
Right. So that now we have a toolkit available for free on our website, and we are trying to scale this in a way that schools can run their own. And I need your help, Meredith, to really get this practices into schools.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I think it's a great example of how, a nonprofit can provide some resource for piloting and learning and digging in where a larger, operation, the food service directors that are on this call and other leaders that are in schools that are on this webinar are probably very taxed for time. So having somebody that can come in and do a deeper dive, even if it's like you said, a micro study in one or two schools, it lends a lot of information that, someone that's in a leadership role then can take and digest and hopefully act on collectively and in partnership with you.
Right. So that
Alex,
one more thing is that we have done now in 5 schools for the pilots, and then every school average that our concept has proven, so that this is gonna work, and we feel like this has a big potential to
It's been about a 50% reduction by average, or 35 to 50%.
50% average overall food waste reduction by weight.
And it
the nice
increased
thing about, yeah, sorry, go ahead, and increasing consumption of the food, I heard you say.
consumption, but also participation. School
Right.
lunch participation increases. And we know from our 10,000 hours in the cafeteria and our amazing waste audits that school food, from just looking at the packaging, school food is much more nutritious than what students bring from home in general.
Thank you. I'm sure those that are in the space really appreciate that compliment because they do work very hard to provide, nutritious food daily.
Yeah.
One thing that strikes me is also that, elementary students that are able to go through this mindful choice program that you have on your website, I believe available for anyone, that if they go through this mindful choice program, they're going to take that knowledge with them for life. So as they move to their secondary experience in middle school and high schools, they completely understand offer versus serve and may even seek out the menu ahead of time on their own because they know that by knowing ahead of time what's going to be offered to them, that it would help them to make a better choice as they become, young adult consumers, let's say.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
great. Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So, Atsuko, what role can partnerships with school districts and municipalities play in scaling nonprofit impact?
Okay, so maybe before that, Rhonda can talk about the benefits for the food service program.
Yeah.
Sure.
In general, the benefits for the food service program is that, if the food is not served, they're going to see they're going to see what's been not served, and they'll understand they can adjust their menu based on what students actually like. If it's disposed of out in the brown bins, out in the cafeteria, they're not going to see necessarily what students are and aren't eating. So when they can see that, they can change their orders and take the dislikes and likes into account. There's more meaningful engagement in the service line between the serving staff and the students. And also, as we said, it brings up school meal participation because there's excitement generated about it because they're talking about it. And
right, and then one more thing is we talked to one of the district supervisors, and she was like, looking at the results, and then maybe we can do more batch cooking so they don't have to cook everything in advance, so that now it's spinning her head now, right? So that this plate waste reduction is going to inform the order of the food. So that's the next step that we are really looking to influence.
But in terms of partnerships with
Partnership.
yeah, with school districts and municipalities is it really does scale it. We can do it in one school. We can make our individual actions. We can bring our reusable bottles everywhere. But it's really, this is a systemic problem. The climate issues are systemic problems. And so as we teach our students the full unvarnished truth about climate change and the effects of it, none of our students get climate grief because they're able to really scale their actions. And when you can do that, you really feel like you're making a difference, and they feel like they have an influence on the system, and they feel a lot less hopeless. But in terms of scaling with municipalities and districts, well, for instance,
Right, as Stephen mentioned, that we are nonprofit, so we can do pilots and then we can fail. But like school districts cannot fail, right? So that we can do trial and errors and improve on it. Then the timing, feels good. Then the school district can actually take that to really scale. But we can do all the legwork, all the trial and errors. So that would be the good partnership that Stephen, we worked together for a long time in plastic-free lunch day and all that. So that's the really benefit of having the partnership with nonprofit with school districts.
Right. That's great. I think you've really exemplified how student-led work really leads to there being more buy-in from their peers within the school community, et cetera. And you've exemplified that. Obviously, I would encourage people to look at the Cafeteria Culture website, because I think you'll find really great resources around plastic-free lunch day and mindful choice meals and all different tactics to reduce waste in general and create a culture of accountability and ownership by the students and the school community at large. But as you've sort of gone through that journey with all of the different things that you've done with audits and student-led work, and the data that's been collected, how does the data collection help build buy-in among the schools and the policymakers? I want to specifically, end on that question so that we can move to the final question as we wrap up the webinar.
Okay, I just want to say one quick thing about how actually data helps policy as well. We always teach our students that good data drives policy. It's good data and their stories, really. And with the video cameras and all of the Atsuko parts of this, the video cameras and the data collection, it's really incredible, and it's incredibly powerful. Just as an example, when we helped to get styrofoam out of schools, after styrofoam was removed from schools, just as a policy, it was a shift in purchasing. And it took 7 years after that for New York State to then ban styrofoam. It had been a back and forth wrestling match for a long time, but it really seeded the ground to have that kind of advocacy and student-led data work really seed the ground for robust policy that helped move the needle in a lot of ways.
Right, and also another example of a plastic-free lunch day that scaled in New York City and national, but also because plastic-free lunch day is 1 day in 3 weeks right now in New York City, but actually that practices informed other days of the week. Now, Stephen, you will love this. That 2022. The average number of plastic items per student was 5.7
on a regular day.
On a regular day, not plastic-free lunch day. And last school year, we did five intensive audits in 5 schools, and then average was 1.8. So, which is, clearly those started as pilots, but student-led and then scaled, and that informs 2 other days. And this is how, we want other school districts to follow this path. And so
it feels like a dress-up day, but it really shows, it lets the school district really embody success.
But also one more thing about the data is data makes the stories, so that student stories are really inspiring, that if they connect from data to their community, to the whole environment, the picture, then of course policymakers will really listen to them, and because it's their personal stories.
And it's about visualizing data too, right? Because if you stack up all of New York City's trays every single day, how with the almost 1 million meals that are served every day, that stack would be 8.5 times higher than the Empire State Building. And that visualization of data is key to bringing that out.
I think that's great that you have done such a good job of weaving the student experience, the student-led voice policy work, and then the visualization so that, people can get the information quickly. Obviously, when you see a visual or hear a visual, you can digest the information a lot faster for most folks, in addition to reading it or seeing it, which is great. I think actually on this webinar, we might have launched something new, a PRI, which is a plastic reduction indicator. And I think that ratio that you mentioned is really quite important and very, very influential in telling the story again to those policymakers, so that they can get a sense of, like, how many times do I have something that's packaged on my breakfast or lunch menu, and what can I do as the menu director to reduce the amount of packaging that's on the menu. It's something tangible that a leader could take away and think about a PRI. So that's really great. I would like to end on one last final question for everyone to just sort of think about and give us a response on. And I'm going to start with Alicia, if you don't mind. Before we end today's webinar, can you share one action you would encourage people to begin taking to reduce food waste?
Thank you so much. I just want to say I'm so inspired by this group, and I look forward to partnering in the future. We can all learn from each other. This is such, it can be daunting. And so to answer your question, Stephen, I would say large district, small district, just pick one thing and dive in. And so, and also lean on people like us that have maybe more resources than you do. For that flyer that you can laminate and put out, that is teaching the cafeteria that you don't have to take everything. You don't have to take the 5 components. And so offer versus serve is one that I think is that messaging just has to be taught and retaught. And I would start with that personally, but don't get paralyzed. We can all take a small bite out of this elephant and get some good impacts from that. So offer versus serve would be my first
Good point. Thank you.
tactic.
Janet, do you want to add? What would be one action people could take to reduce food waste?
Well, other than the offer versus serve, which I do agree with Alicia, as maybe implementing, and again, back on the school food service, mine is maybe implementing share tables. It's one low cost opportunity, and it can address multiple issues, and making them available at least immediately to students who are still hungry at the meal period, and then the opportunity to potentially rescue them back to production. So I think that would be a good place to start as well.
Great. Meredith?
So I'm totally on
action.
board. Yep, I'm totally on board with the offer versus serve and share table, like full stop for sure. One thing I would add is we've really, I think, benefited from kind of an integrated approach where we've really partnered closely with our food service colleagues, our wellness program and policy office. So basically integrating food service, wellness, and sustainability, because it actually, by doing that, we're kind of mutually reinforcing one another's work for benefit and to enhance each one of us, each one of our facets or our little domains. It really does help to enhance all of our goals, our communications, our impact. And it really minimizes some confusion when people understand that these things really are connected. They're even more connected to taking action. So I found that to be here in New York City, especially, we're lucky we've got great partners working with partner organizations such as Cafeteria Culture to really do those things like piloting. Couldn't ask for a better situation in terms of internal and external partnerships. I think the measuring and visualization of impact, essential. You could do, even if you do a little light audit and you take some pictures, that's a powerful tool for you to be able to take even very straightforward, simple actions. And I love, Alicia, what you said. I couldn't agree more. Just pick one, pick something to start with, just try. Just
Right.
start small. You don't have to start with the utopian version. Small measures can equal big impact, especially over time.
Great, thank you, Meredith. Atsuko and Rhonda, do you have one action that you would recommend to the leaders and participants that are on the webinar to take to reduce food waste?
Right. So first, if you are a parent, then talk to your child to observe the lunch line really well. And then how did the lunch lady or lunch person put the food on your plate? Are they all already on the plate together? Did you say what you want? Let's start with the conversation, and then you can actually talk to the school or teacher. That's like, as a parent, that you can start. And for the district, yes, offer versus serve is great. We do have the tools that for teachers to actually share the rules. We call it guidelines. The rule feels a little like, pressed from the top. So to share in the classroom, and also talk about the menu components. What are the vegetables? What are fruits? Young people don't even know what the fruits are, what the vegetables are, and the names of the, so those are really, effective. That we saw, like kindergarten, first and second graders that start with that engages much more for them to actually choose what they want. They don't know what cauliflowers are. They don't know what the beans are, and so because they never had it before.
Yeah.
Right. So let's just start with that. Is really important. And
Great.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I
Rhonda?
just want to underscore what Atsuko said, just like starting by observing and listening, and then you'll really have your starting place by really listening to where people are. It may be a different place with a different school, everybody's starting at a different place. And to start listening and observing with gratitude for what people have to offer. That's the main thing I love about Atsuko and about working with her. It's the gratitude.
Make sure your children actually say thank you to the lunch people.
Wonderful, exactly. Alex, do you want to close us out?
Yes, I want to say thank you to all the panelists. This was very informative. And thank you to everyone who joined and watched this webinar. We did get a couple Q&A questions. I know we're at time, but we will send a follow-up email with some resources from all the organizations, a recording of this video, and we'll have answers to the Q&A questions as well.